Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 11:30 session here. I think we're breakout 10. This is the Fair Data Maturity Model of the Future, addressing the gaps and opportunities. I'm Shelley. I'm with the American Geophysical Union. I'm our Vice President for Open Science Leadership, and it's really quite a delight to see you all here. It's important to acknowledge the land where we are and celebrate the first Australians on whose traditional lands we are meeting this week. And we pay our respects to their elders, past and present. I live in Maryland, which is near the Potomac River, and also acknowledge there are several tribes that are indigenous to that area, and I acknowledge all of those as well. So the Fair Data Maturity Model working group has completed the recommendation. I'll tell you a little bit about that. I'm going to start out with a little orientation, and then I will introduce our speakers, and we have 3 speakers today, and then we'll have a discussion and follow up with a wrap-up. So the co-chairs, Edith Herzig and Keith Russell, myself, Anu Devararu, and Solange Santos are all here. Except for Edith. So we miss her. I hope she's online. If she's not, we will have to catch up later. But we are in the status of maintaining deliverables. If you didn't know that that was actually a working group status, it means you continuing to help your deliverables be adopted. And our 2 objectives, and Edith would be proud of me because when Edith talks about this widening and deepening, it's expanding that awareness and adoption and bringing it to the attention of everyone. So you are here for that purpose. So check mark to our widening. And then our speakers are going to help us on the deepening, increasing the depth of cooperation and integration, and starting to think about how this model works for others. So what is it? So what is a maturity model? It might be new to you. So this is we know that the fair data principles are not strict. We know they are a concept and an idea. There is quite a bit of ambiguity. Many of you are working on identifying and resolving that ambiguity in your own context. And it's not an assessment. It's not a fair assessment. It's a framework for the assessment. So we want to, for all of the folks that are putting together different fair assessments, the model is a way to take all of the different ways for those measurements to come to one single way of measuring. So it's like a mapping. You're mapping from the different ways different assessments are working and mapping it back to the fair data maturity model. So it's a set of core assessment criteria. It allows you to have the model and the toolkit together and some examples. There's a checklist, and then, of course, the published RDA recommendations, and we do have a paper as well. If you want to grab that QR code that takes you to our working group page, we highly recommend that you come and join us over there as a member who follows. It gives you an update when we have new examples of the implementation, and the materials are all available there in the wiki, and so hopefully we'll see a few of you are joining, or maybe you're already members. So what it isn't is important to also say. So it's not a new evaluation method. That is not what we're doing. We celebrate everybody's attempt to actually work on evaluation methods. The concept of verification is broad and exciting. And it doesn't tell you how to do the evaluation criteria, just that you need to do these evaluation criteria. I think that's really important. And we don't change the nature of what fair is. Many folks have added in additional acronyms, fair plus this and fair plus that. We don't say that's good or bad. We take fair as what has been defined by the original creators of that mechanism. So I won't expect you to read all the little words, but we have been in existence since 2019. We completed our recommendations, and you can grab them here through this QR code that resolves to the DOI. I think the most important number to show you on this, I did the screenshot today. There's over 17,000 views and 12,000 downloads. This is an important document. it's important recommendation coming out of RDA, and it helps us internationally bring together all the many assessment methodologies for every single group and discipline. And I think that really is a testament to the community. If I recall, they used to put our meetings in the largest room that existed for the conference because it was standing room only. And the fact that you are fairly well filling up this room as well indicates how important this continues to be. So thank you all for being here. We had a lot of feedback in the adoptions. That feedback is gathered. We pay attention to it very closely. It informs the future of how the assessment is viewed. We have the intention of doing an update to the assessment. We don't have a schedule for that at the moment, but if there's real interest within the community, that could be something that we move forward with. So I won't read all of these. I think you'll all find them really familiar, and you're welcome to consider these as areas that you might be interested in as well, or maybe bring in additional concepts. And I'm gonna before I introduce our speakers, I'm just gonna end with the QR code again to get to the working group. Let you know that we have a Zenodo community, we have GitHub, you can join the mailing list, and we also have an article within the data science. I don't have QR codes for all of that stuff at the bottom, but when you gain access to the slides, you'll be able to gain, there's links to everything there. All right, so let me introduce our speakers. We're going to talk about 3 different areas: physical sample software and publishing, and I'm really excited about our speakers today. So Natalie Raia is joining us from the United States. She's with the College of Information Science at the University of Arizona. Her work bridges social and information science to improve earth science cyber infrastructure. She's the co-chair of the Earth Science Information Partners Physical Sample Curation Cluster and is an active participant in international community efforts to develop resources to enable scientists in making their samples and data more discoverable and fair. So she will go first, followed by Gnana Bharathy, who is with ARDC as one of the national expert members and also affiliated with the University of Technology, Sydney. His expertise is in AI and ML architecture and also within program management, and will talk to us about fair software. Solange Santos is from Cielo. Cielo is located in Sao Paulo in Brazil. She's the editorial manager and publishing coordinator for Cielo as a publisher, and is representing the open access. Cielo represents open access publishing in South America and Portugal. And Solange, I'm pretty sure it's bigger than that, but that's pretty big right there. So she is joining us virtually. So can I invite Natalie up to the podium to get us started? Let me get on her first slide. And hello. There you go.
Well, thank you to the co-chairs for the session for the opportunity to speak. As Shelley said, my name is Natalie Raia. I'm based at the University of Arizona in the College of Information Science. Caveat up front, I am new to the Fair Data Maturity Model Working Group activities, and so I think that'll actually make for a really interesting talk and discussion here, and I want to commend the working group for their very clear outputs, because as I was working to prepare this talk, I was engaging with your work on Zenodo for the first time, and so it's exciting to think about this in an exploratory way with physical samples, and to envision the ways that we in the sample data community can think about using this moving forward. I have a couple slides because it's easy to get caught up in indicators and kind of in our spreadsheets and things, but I want to start by reminding and for those who may not think about samples on a day-to-day basis or obsessive over them like I do, talk about why fair data maturity model matters for samples. So a couple assertions. Samples are highly reusable and often priceless forms of data that underpin numerous disciplines: geology, biomedical, archaeology. You can envision the list. Samples are anchors for increasing the discoverability and reuse of data. When we talk to users, they think in their minds they're working from samples down. It goes back to the sample and thinking about the data and research products that are derived from that sample. And then given the great investments made into collecting, curating, and studying samples, we have a collective responsibility to ensure that samples are well documented, findable, and thus reusable. And to make one other point, well-documented archived samples, I would argue, enable more ethical, equitable access to sample-based science. And so we can think about things like the environmental impact of traveling and doing field work, taking materials from spaces, thinking about preserving sensitive sites. We can think about this from the perspective of power dynamics. Who gets to do science, sample-based science in certain places? We have differing physical abilities, financial capacities, personal safety challenges, political unrest, gatekeeping, all which play into people's ability to collect and conduct sample-based science. And in some fields, I come from the geoscience discipline, we're reckoning with extractive legacies of sample-based science, including parachute science. And so FAIR really matters for all of these topics, and I think it's important to keep that in mind always. And so I was asked to think about and present on applying the FAIR data maturity model to the physical sample space. So of course the FAIR principles were designed for digital data, and physical samples have some additional challenges and considerations when you go to talk about applying FAIR. So applied to physical samples, the FAIR principles, kind of as an overview, the F and the A, relate to the digital visibility of samples, so indicating the existence of a sample and maybe where that sample might be located on Earth. The I will relate to the connection of siloed sample discovery portals. So when we talk to researchers who are looking to reuse samples, they're having to go to individual museum search portals if they exist, or try to talk to colleagues to find, samples that are in closets and basements and unknown places to reuse. The R relates to having rich and consistently interpretable metadata that better enables reuse of the derived data, but also the physical object itself. So again, delivering on the investments that our funders make in collecting and analyzing samples. And so if we look to the future and we envision all of these pieces coming together, and kind of the downstream, if all of the FAIR data maturity model indicators are kind of fulfilled, what could this look like? Well, the future, I would argue, is fairly close, and we're getting there. This is an example from the iSamples project, which came out of the US and recently is wrapping up. But we're looking at the island of Raia here, and each of the dots are samples that are coming from different physical sample repositories, and this is enabled all through sample PIDs. And so the FAIR data maturity model indicators, I think, underpin all of this very strongly, and we can look to a world in which all of the items on the left are linked and resolvable and tie back to the samples. So I'm just going to touch briefly on the F, A, I, and R. I think the core takeaway is that as a community, I think there's an opportunity for the physical sample data community to look more closely at the FAIR data maturity model and think of this as a tool for assessing where we are either from the PID allocating agent side or from other infrastructure providers that relate to this. So for the findable, we're really looking to bring samples online, release that data that's often collected in analog formats, get the community on board with and understanding the value and the relevance of persistent identifiers like IGSN IDs. On the metadata side, there's work to do to kind of converge on standards, a lot of work to do there. And I'll touch on an RDA space that's working on that right now. But I think the metadata are, what is it, where did it come from, where is it located. There's ongoing work to better link data and related research products, though more work is needed to automate and bridge via APIs. And then from a very practical level, which is definitely something that's different from the digital data space, there's a large effort underway within large managed collections to actually just get the PIDs live and registered, and that takes a lot of capacity and time. And there's education that needs to happen in the space related to different types of identifiers and what does it actually mean to be globally unique, persistent, web resolvable. And so the FAIR data maturity model, I think, helps us there too. In the RDA space, working towards the indicators under the F, I would point to the RDA sample type classification working group, which has recently kicked off. They have a poster 78, so I wanted to highlight that. And also for others who may be interested, DataCite has a really interesting IGSN ID implementation blog series that shows different PID allocating agents for samples in this space. The other interesting wrinkle that we have in thinking about applying FAIR to samples is that there's differing concepts of accessibility with digital data, born digital data. We don't have to worry about anything really related physically from the user side. Of course, on the data side, people worry about where the servers are and things, but for the community using these sample PIDs, there's the accessibility of the data, but also concepts and confusion around accessibility of where the samples are actually located. So I'd say that we're doing well on the indicator that speaks to metadata being retrievable through sample PIDs and kind of human accessible data, but there's more work that needs to be done on, again, on APIs and then the user interface side of making this workable for communities. And then I think this is my final slide. Briefly touching on the I and the R, interoperability is of course a challenge in many spaces, and samples are no different. There's common schemas that have been in use and continue to be developed and emerging. DataCite, Darwin Core is big for biodiversity, bioinformatics, but getting the kind of downstream adoption across siloed PID allocating agents and to get users to understand why they should be using these standards is, I think, the crux of where we are sitting at for fulfilling the indicators in the data maturity model. Related to that is shared vocabularies. On the reusability side, the provenance components of the FAIR data maturity model are very important and something that is already being used in the sample space, but I think the PIDs and the FAIR data maturity model point us to ways to make that more structured and machine actionable. And the citation of samples as it relates to ensuring proper attribution is a core problem, and I think samples were included in the complex citation working group as a use case. So we're very excited for the developments there. I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Natalie. Complex citation folks are meeting tomorrow, in case you want to check that out. So can I invite Gnana up to the stage? Oh, hop up. All right, there we go. All right, fantastic. Take it away. Oh, I'm sorry. I should have advanced that for you.
So this moves the slide.
Indeed. Indeed.
Yeah.
Off you go.
Thank you. I was bitten by this yesterday.
And your microphone is going to be right there.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. So I'm here on behalf of FAIR for Machine Learning Group, and so that is. So I'm representing the co-chairs of that group. So this is so in the context of FAIR for data maturity. So we have a significant stake in this. That of course FDMM gives us a scaffolding to measure and place the links and the machine learning in this context. But we know FAIR principles extend well beyond just the data, and citing Wilkinson's of 2016 and subsequent work. But different research assets or objects have different levels of maturity. And FAIR for machine learning actually spans multiple of these assets. That is data, software, models. Actually, even if you were to dig a bit deeper, you will find other categories as well. So the machine learning, as you can see, it's composed of, or a function of course, there is data, model, and either workflow/code, and could also should consider output as one of the components of it, and even I would posit the purpose of the model, or what the model does, is could also be considered when you are representing machine learning or AI. So this working group was started about 4 years ago, and it came from Katz et al. When they put in their first, first proposal. And so that's how it got started a couple of years later, and then it got going with that. So just to give you an outline of the activities that the group has been undertaking. And firstly, define machine learning and machine learning life cycle, and map how and where the FAIR applies in this machine learning life cycle. And FAIR for ML metadata, and how that is being handled. And then also generalizing and crosswalking. These are the 4 key elements that this group has been particularly looking into. So so the machine learning life cycle is comprised of broadly 10 steps, starting from problem formulation, which arguably the most important component, and acquiring and pre-processing data, and developing and validating the model, and that's model evaluation, can split into model creation, model selection, creation, or evaluation, and then finally model validation. And then, of course, once you validate the model, you would deploy. You are expected to deploy and monitor and use it. At some point, you want to retire as well. And so there is also, because it's a model, is an artifact, you also need to think about the storage and how and where it is held, etc. In addition to holding the data that's required. So, and then, of course, we want to think about the model reuse. What this doesn't illustrate you well is this consists of a number of iterative cycles. So machine learning is all about cyclic. You just go, wheels on the bus go round and round. And so this is an important consideration. But here we are leaving out the publication, documentation, etc., that are covered in the output section that are addressed elsewhere. But this life cycle itself is central to understanding machine learning, how it interacts with the digital objects. So this is just my attempt to summarize what these components are, or what the stages are, and where FAIR actually applies. I do not want to actually walk you through every step of it, except to illustrate. But let's take the case of, say, problem formulation. And the problem itself should be, and if you take the accessibility and so on, at least the problem metadata must be captured and published and linked. And interoperability would dictate that you would use some domain ontologies or vocabularies and keep it in a manner that is accessible. Okay? And in number of cases, you need PIDs, and the data should be versioned, and there should be metadata in the data. There should be metadata in the model, and so on. So to cut the long story short, that is a first one. So mapping the FAIR life cycle, and also mapping the key components of FAIR onto each of these stages of the life cycle. Okay, and the FAIR ML also itself has a metadata component. Here we are looking at the metadata in the model primarily, and so it builds on existing community schemas. So we are not reinventing anything. So it's part of that, the central to that, of course, there is, as I mentioned, there is machine learning. There's the data component and the software component in it. But in this particular case, there is a metadata for machine learning component, and that again is looking at various tools and so on. And croissant is something that you actually heard in the morning about, and so. Thank you. So that is, so it's essentially it is placing the metadata in the right tools and environment and making the choices around that. And but also at the same time, you also want to manage the software. So Code Meta provides one option for that. And many of them are aligned to one form or other, the schema.org. This is an example of model card, the metadata or description of the model. And so it is done in YAML, and there are other versions of it. And then you have Hugging Face, for example, is now famous for holding such metadata for models. And because there are many other schemes that exist, so it is important to map against them to create the interoperability. So this gives an anatomy or a quick overview of crosswalk, which the group had done in at least one whole version of it. And so that's a key metadata needed to indicate and support, and we are assessing other mapping language and so on. So this is the FAIR-ML metadata crosswalk section. So, so the next steps for us is to also consolidate this crosswalk and aim and creating, of course, the new version and so on. And we have sought community feedback. But we also want to, we have some early adopters, but we want to increase the number of adopters, or augment the adoption process with onboarding other. Yes, thank you. So so that is a next one. So in this context, we know that it's related to research software related, which gives us reproducibility. But FAIR-ML is about behavioral reproducibility. And there are a lot of commonalities, bits, metadata, licenses, access, files, etc., that is common to research software and machine learning. But similarly, some of it is shared with data as well. And but it's more than that, because it's composed of multiple things. Then there is also a need for a system level composability metrics as well. So so there is, so this is just a high level proposition that we need to also think about a composable linkage layer, because the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. So we may optimize each of them separately, but you also need to bring together, and there need to be a sum metric to put it all together. And with that, I will invite you to join FairML, or Fairful ML group. And so with that, I can take questions or quietly slip away. Thank you.
Oops, careful. We'll have an opportunity for questions during the discussion, and we can expand on things. So thank you so much, and we'll move on to our third speaker. Solange, would you like to, can we allow Solange to share their screen? Hello. It's good to see you.
I can see me, but that's not important. I will share my screen.
Go ahead.
Okay, just put.
All right, looking good. Yep.
Is it working? No, it's not in the.
Yes,
now,
it is.
Yes.
It is. It looks fantastic. Please go ahead.
I see you now. Okay, thank you, Shelley and co-chair, for inviting me to participate in this panel. Today I will share with you the experience of, the recent experience of Cielo adopting Fair Data Maturity Model. For those who are not familiar with Cielo program, I have to say that Cielo was launched in 1998. It's a pioneer initiative on open access model. We launched Cielo, we born open access, we launched Cielo 4 years before the most important open access declaration and conference, that is Budapest conference in 2002. And Cielo is also a publishing model, it's a framework, it provides a roadmap, principles, and methodology and infrastructure for development national collections. The Cielo model has been adopted by 17 countries, and nowadays 14 countries in Latin America, Portugal, as well as Portugal, Spain, and South Africa. Nowadays, we have more than 1,400 journals in Cielo Network, 55,000 of articles published by year, more than 1.2 million articles are available in total. So we also provide a multilingual platform and resource, Spanish, Portuguese, and English. And I have to say that these journals report an important proportion of the world research, which complements what has been published by foreign journals. This is also to share with you that Cielo provides a model that not only for open access journals, but also for books, and we also offer servers and repositories such as Cielo Preprints and Cielo Data server. So Cielo is offering, it's an international cooperation program that offers infrastructure needed to operate the entire research cycle. So we are work with those countries, developing national capacities and offer open infrastructure. Cielo Data is in regular operation since 2022. It's a multidisciplinary repository for deposit, preservation, and dissemination of data related to articles that has been published by journals or manuscript deposited by Cielo preprints. We also offer, we decide to adopt fair data maturity model because Cielo has been promoted FAIR principles since 2008, and fair data maturity model offers us to a concrete framework to implement FAIR principles and measuring our progress and the gaps in Cielo data. We also, the fair data maturity model adoption also help us to allow us to identify, assess the fair data maturity and establish minimum criteria for those data sets that has been deposited in Cielo data. We also are looking for improvement of value and strengthening credibility of journals and the research that those journals are publishing. We are working on enhancing transparency of the scientific publication, scientific integrity and reuse, and promoting reuse of the data sets that are being deposited in Cielo data. And we are also aiming to improve Cielo data visibility. We are working on obtaining Quartus Seal certification and also ISO 16363, that is a certification for trustworthy digital repositories. And fair data maturity model has helped us to identify the strengths and gaps, and we are working on it. Okay. And another thing that I have to highlight is that inside Cielo network, dealing with different 17 countries in Latin America, we have to learn, we have learned, and we have to deal with different kind of asymmetries. And fair data maturity model allow us to evaluate this, the fairness, and dealing accordingly the many asymmetries we face. The goal is the advancement from each community starting point. So it's not the same if you are working on working with journals in Cielo Brazil collection. Is not the same. We are not facing the same problems that we are dealing with when you are adopting open science practices in Cielo Bolivia, Cielo Peru, or Cielo Mexico. So we are dealing with different kind of asymmetries in terms of field of knowledge, asymmetries and maturity levels in terms of journals and development of national collections. Cielo understand the asymmetries don't prevent the progress. It defines where and how educational effort should be focused, and the fair data maturity model help us to identify the areas where we need more attention. And Cielo model and framework is structured to dealing with this kind of asymmetries and to accommodate this kind of asymmetries. So for us, for Latin American countries, for Cielo network, the pedagogical environment is an important aspect, and Cielo data is provided this pedagogical environment where other collections, other journals, based on those 17 countries can experiment and try to follow the same steps of collections like Cielo Brazil or Cielo Mexico that are more advanced on the adoption of the open science best practices. So we have provided multilingual comprehensive documentation about fair data maturity procedures. We have prepared guide for authors, guidelines for data curation for editorial teams. video tutorials, README template files, and also each resource that we have developed is related to one indicator of a fair data maturity model, is addressing that specific aspect. We also conducted an exercise with data sets in Cielo Brazil and Cielo Mexico, and we were positively surprised by the results, but we also identified that there is a gap here in interoperation, that we need more improvement in terms of adoption of vocabularies and semantic standards. But the other aspects, we have some improvement, but I think that our challenge is solve the problem with interoperability. For our next steps, working with Fair Data Maturity Model and Cielo Network, is that we have created a working group to work in ISO 16363, and also to Quartus Seal, that we are planning to applicate it for those certifications, and update author guides and editorial team guides for the adoption of fair vocabulary to improve metadata provenance. We are also planning a series of webinars for specific disciplines in order to promote and to promote the advancement and the adoption of Cielo data and Cielo data maturity model. We are looking for gradual cultural change in this kind of adoption in Cielo network. We have to face a lot of difficulties and challenges, but we are working on that. Thank you for the opportunity. I think 10 minutes. Great. Stop sharing.
Solange, you talked a little bit faster than I was ready. I was running up the stairs. No, she can't be done yet. No. Thank you so much. That was fantastic. I really appreciated your perspective, especially coming from one publisher to another. So I'm sure we'll get into that in the discussion. So it's time to transition over to our discussion panelists. So if you could all join me up front. I will hand it over to Keith Russell to manage us at this point, and yeah, we don't need any slides at the moment, so fantastic. Come on up.
Thank you.
Yes. All right.
Great. Thank you. Welcome. Have a seat. Natalie, Gnana, and Solange, you probably can't quite see through Zoom, but you're the big face in the background now. First of all, are there any questions for our three speakers?
Yes.
So I think the question, to Natalie on the reflection on the interoperability with relationship derived from sample data, provenance, and process. It is by Volmar. Volmar here. Why don't you ask? Because the question is quite short, so if you can elaborate, that would be great.
Yeah, there was a very short limit to how much you could type in that form. So the question is basically, with regards to relationships between samples, you can have derived samples, and then you have the data that you mentioned that is kind of related to each samples, and you could have several. And in between a derived sample and its parent, there could be a process. And the same is for getting the data into a digital format. There's a process, so provenance and things like that. So, I mean, for samples, I'm thinking maybe provenance information and these relationships might be the key for the interoperability. Is there anything else for interoperability that you have been reflecting on from the samples working group?
Sorry. Yeah. We only have one microphone, so there's going to be a lot of walking backwards and forwards.
So I think one of the largest challenges for thinking about sample interoperability and with the lens of enabling discovery, the biggest thing we're finding is converging on vocabularies at interdisciplinary scales, but also within domains, even agreeing on vocabularies of anything from how you describe a sample to enabled faceted search in the ways that people want to search for samples to reuse. So I think converging on controlled vocabularies is always a challenging thing and continues to be for the sample space. The provenance side, I think we can look to how existing library scientists do this, and certainly the managed collection space has their own set of needs and ways that they've dealt with this already, but translating that into the sample PID space and the sample metadata space, I think there's work to do there. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I would say the controlled vocabularies and of course not everything needs to be controlled, but there is a certain level towards the use cases for why we're doing all this work anyways. And so I think to that point also development of use cases for interoperability. Do we need one vocabulary to rule them all? Are there people that want to search across disciplines? There are, I think, but fleshing those out is important work to do.
And there's another question there.
Hello, Eric Laurie from the Australian Institute of Marine Science. I've got a question about FDMM, and I was wondering if you could explain the core extension that FDMM covers that, say, Croissant doesn't cover. Clearly, Croissant covers quite a lot, so I was just trying to wonder what's the main extension.
Thank you. Croissant cover quite a bit of territory today. But at the same time, when we were starting out, it had much less. But at the same time, it is, it's a good foundation, but it is still one particular standard and one particular tool set and so on. So we haven't really explored every case or use case that might come out of it. But I see some of the things that Croissant doesn't yet cover is Croissant is quite data focused, and then there are tools like Code Meta for code and schema.org and so on. But as I was conceptualizing machine learning as a composite of multiple of these. So each of these subdomain might have something, and but to bring it all together is something that we need to look at. And also other one is what is specific to machine learning itself, model cards and so on, which is also going to be changing as new models evolve. Even though metadata might be same, but it's going to it's a time in flux. So that's explains why this group needs to be active at this junction. Thank you. Good question.
I think there's a question here at the front. Shelley?
This one's for Solange. Hi, Shelley Stahl. I was thinking when you were talking about your timeline for implementing the ISO standard or the Quartra Steel standard, I was thinking about the number of authors that you're working with and your editors and reviewers and all of the people involved in understanding what all that means. And for Central America, for South America, for Portugal, how's your community understanding FAIR? How are they reacting to the steps that Cielo is taking? If you could talk to that, please.
Actually, as I presented, the educational perspective, educational dimension is really, really important for Cielo, because our community, they do not understand fair data maturity model. They do not understand all the open science best practices. It's our role to promote these adoptions, the international standard adoptions. So since the beginning, Cielo is promoting best practices and innovations in publication in Latin America for 25 years. It's not easy, it's not simple. They do not understand. That's why I highlighted in my presentation the educational aspects and perspectives. For instance, related to fair data maturity model, I know that you guys are doing a really good job with your deliverables, and you provide your deliverables in English, for instance, and it's available, and in your perspective, it's accessible. But for our communities, if you have just information in English, it's not available and it's not accessible. That's why Cielo is working with those more than 1,400 journals in order to promote dealing with those different kind of asymmetries in terms of national policies, journals adoptions, and different kind of disciplines in order to prepare documentation. As I told you, we have documentation in Portuguese, Spanish, and Portuguese, because we need to do it easier. Otherwise, they will not advance on this kind of adoption. So this is the way that we are dealing with our communities. Preparing webinars, webinar series, documentation, meetings, and meetings including with each journal sometimes, and each group of journals in a field or in a discipline. That's the way we are advancing, but it's not easy, it's not fast.
Okay, thank you, Solange. Are there any other questions for our speakers? Otherwise, I'll move on to the discussion. Okay, great. Oh, yeah, there is a question at the back there.
Hi, I'm Roberto from Brazil. I work at University Hospital, south of Brazil, Hospital de Clínicas de Porto Alegre. And I have a question for Solange about global initiatives and Cielo. How crucial is collaborative effort to fundamentally shift the open science culture in Brazil, for your opinion?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Are
you from Porto Alegre? Could you repeat it in Portuguese? But just because I couldn't hear it.
Ok. Eu repeti em português. Eu sou bastante interessado em saber, assim...
I think your mic is not working well. That's why I didn't understand.
Ok. Eu estou bastante interessado em saber se a Cielo tem ligações com iniciativas globais.
Could someone repeat on the other microphone the question, because it's cutting.
Okay, could you, if you could please repeat it in English. I'm not very good at Portuguese, I'm afraid. If you could repeat the question in English, I can read it into this microphone.
Okay.
I think that's the mic. I couldn't hear the question. It's cutting.
Yeah, we'll do it this way. Yeah. We're getting a lot of exercise today, so yes. No problem at all. There you are.
I repeat the question in Portuguese. Eu estou interessado, Solange, em saber se a Cielo tem ligações com iniciativas globais, com a Research Data Alliance, por exemplo. Se a Cielo ela faz conexões com essas iniciativas globais para implementação da Open Science e os princípios FAIR no Brasil.
I couldn't hear you. I don't know if you are speaking so close to the mic, but I can't hear you. I don't know why.
Could you speak directly into the microphone?
Yes. Yes.
Shelley, I can hear you.
Yes,
yes. So sorry. The
adoption of open science and fair principles in Brazil, and Cielo try to connect other initiatives around the world. For example, ARDC initiative.
Yes. And the question is Cielo doing that? Or yes? Okay, thank you. Yes, thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Yes, Cielo now is part of the RDA. We are trying to, we have been promoted FAIR principles since 2008, and we do that based on Cielo selection and indexing criteria. That's the way we promote FAIR principles, FAIR data maturity model, and other advancements, because we do not have a national policy for those kind of things. But Cielo is an important, initiative to pressure the editorial system in Latin America, including in Brazil, and also in Brazil, in order to adoption of those best practices. This is the indexing criteria for Cielo Brazil and for other national collections. We have those criteria, and we said you should have a data availability statement for your journal. I know that for you guys, it's really normal and common in your journals to have data availability statement, but for Latin American countries and journals, it's not common, and Cielo has been promoted that. So there are a lot of improvements, a lot of best practices that Cielo is pushing the editors. They don't want to do this change, but we are pushing them to adopt those best practices. And we have also Cielo priority lines that is for the entire Cielo network, and we set some goals to be achieved in 4 or 5 years. That's the way that we are promoting those advancements. Otherwise, there are countries such as Brazil inside the Cielo network that there is no national policies or institution promoting that. And we have to push the editors and the Latin American publishing system in order to adopt those best practices and standards. That's the way we are pushing them.
Okay, thank you, Solange. Yes. Okay, I'd now like to move on to the discussion. So we were, as the co-chairs of the Fair Data Maturity Model Working Group, we were getting together, and of course the Fair Data Maturity Model was created several years ago, and times are moving on, and we've had some really interesting discussions today. So what we want to do, first of all, is just reflect a little bit on fair assessment, and what does that look like? Is there still a need for that? How is that progressing? and then I'd like to take that discussion a bit further in some of the further discussions. So first of all, I'd like to just raise with each of our speakers, what do you see as key challenges in making your data or software or materials fair, and how can assessment, like a fair data maturity model, help to address this? So Natalie, what do you see as the key challenges in making, in your case, samples fair, and how can either the fair data maturity model or some other assessment mechanism help to address that?
Yeah, so one core challenge would be just supporting researchers in collecting rich sample metadata to start. And so I think there's tools coming online to support that. And so that's exciting because that's where I think the FAIR data starts. We need the metadata to exist in the first place before we even talk about getting it into interoperable and machine actionable formats. And remind me the second part of the question? Oh, fair data maturity model. Yeah, so I think that there is ongoing discussion and kind of exploration of whether having some sort of, I loved the graphic that Solange put on the slide towards the end, kind of with the percentages of the F, the A, the I, and the R. So I think it's an open conversation still of whether there's a space for doing that kind of visual metric that might be underpinned and informed by something like the data maturity model, but translated into something that's very visually, appealing to researchers, so that when they are depositing their data in a sample metadata archive, when they are minting persistent identifiers for samples, they're incentivized to provide as much information as possible, and they begin to get a glimpse at concepts related to FAIR and kind of maturity of that data.
Okay, great, thank you. If you could pass over to Gnana.
Thank you, Keith. It's in the machine learning space, which seems to be moving fairly fast and throwing new, new challenges every day. So I see the challenges to FAIR are fewfold. One, of course, getting the research community to recognize the importance of FAIR when so many things are changing and when they're chasing targets and the new shiny objects and so on. So get them to invest time in making things fair is one key issue. So easier we make it to the community to use it, more would be the adoption. Of course, it can have both carrot and the stick. The stick would be the journal could require it, then you don't have much choice. But the better option is carrot, because if you dictate by stick, it would be like the metric would become the target. They will somehow get to it, and you don't know whether it would be really fair. So I think that the human challenge is the biggest, as I see it.
And so, just building on that, do you see an assessment model, a metric, something like that? Do you see that as a carrot or a stick, or how would you want to deploy that metric?
An assessment model itself is neither a carrot or a stick. It's the outcome of the assessment, how it is fitting into the landscape of incentives versus disincentives is the carrot or a stick. Or rather, we know how the citations targets are, publication targets are, and so on. So when this plugs into that, even if it's not a carrot or a stick, it becomes that transference of that incentive system. So what we need to be careful is that it's good metric system, assess a maturity model, ceases to be a maturity model, but a target.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to Solange. Solange, I think you partly answered this question already in your presentation. You had that lovely slide up there with FAI&R, and interoperable was, you'd run it through Fuji, and that was really, interoperable was the gap. That was the one that was lacking a bit more. Just going through that exercise and finding out that interoperability was the gap, what has that enabled you working with those authors or with those journals? What has that helped you to progress anything?
The challenge that we are facing is because we are receiving data that are linked to the scientific articles that isn't fair since the beginning. So, and also we have some communities that are not using vocabularies. So they are using natural language or keywords to describe their research, and they are not adopting those vocabularies. There are some areas that there is specific vocabularies, and we have implemented in Cielo data, but most of disciplines, they are not using any vocabulary. And when we try to promote, you should use this kind of descriptor or fair vocabulary, there are some resistance, you know. I think that this aspect is related to they are not being prepared. They are not preparing their data to be fair since the beginning, and they have to redo some work, and they don't want to do it. So that's why I always highlight the educational perspective and dimension that is important to work with those communities and to highlight the importance of being fair, of vocabulary adoptions and so on. So that's to convince them to do that, and also implement it in Cielo data for those publications. I think it's a big challenge for us in our case.
Okay, thank you, Solange. The next question, and that's building on that point about the carrot and the stick and having researchers put in the time and effort. What do you see, and this is for each of you, what do you see as the organization or the party that should be bearing the cost for actually putting in the effort? Is that the researcher? Is that the institution? Is that the funder? Is that the journal? Is it industry? Because if there's more work involved in making samples fair, machine learning models fair, research articles or data fair, who's going to cover for that, and where should that come from? Natalie?
That's a great question. So from the samples side, I would say that so we have pieces in place, and I think it's actually, there's a lot that's already there in terms of providers like the IGSN EV and allocating agents that kind of subscribe, not in a literal sense, but kind of subscribe to the ethos there on converging on standards and vocabularies and providing templates for the researchers. So the templates, I think, are the currency, so to speak, on making it easier to upload and reducing that time cost on the researcher side. And I think I mentioned tools already. There's interesting tools for collecting data in the field and integrations with electronic lab notebooks, et cetera. So in that way, I think it's distributed and shared, but there's a larger conversation about the sustainability and the funding of the organizations that are, for instance, minting the PIDs, or organizations like the IGSN EV that are kind of overseeing that community effort. So challenging question, but I think that we should look at resources that are already in place, structures that are already in place, and ensure that we're getting that into the hands of the researchers to reduce that time burden.
Okay, thank you. Gnana?
Thank you. I would actually conceptualize it in two different manners. One is a short-term and other one a long-term. The short-term one, it is anyone but the researcher, because the research community as individuals are already bearing a fair bit of burden, time burden. I mean, majority of the research is carried out in your own time. And so placing an additional burden is not going to work in the favor of FAIR, nor the researcher. So it's anything but the researcher, but we could think about who should bear the cost. I would say this is a controversial thing. Maybe if somebody is actually being profitable in this, they should bear the cost. I don't need to name. We all know who that is, or which of the stakeholder that is, who should actually legitimately bear the cost of it. But to make it, effectable, the infrastructure sector could play a role to help as much as possible. And all but one party are not really a profitable entity here. So I'll leave that. And on the long term, I think if you want good science, if you want open science, the whole structure need to reevaluate itself and change. The incentives, mechanisms, the interactions, a lot of the whole system as a whole need to do some navel gazing and change for good.
Okay,
thank you.
Thanks, Gnana. Solange, do you have any perspective on that? Who should bear the costs? Where do you see?
In Latin America context, it should primarily be covered by academic institutions and public agencies that funds research, because it involves not only financial resource, but we are talking about technical infrastructures. We do not have a lot of open infrastructures. We also need specialized personnel to work with researchers. We have some funding agents that are asking for data management plan, but they do not ask for the data and check if the data are fair, for instance. They ask just for the data management plan, but they are not checking if the result, if the outputs are fair. So we have these aspects. And I think those institutions, when I say academic institutions, I'm referring also to university. University is part of this ecosystem. And I think that we need establish a shared responsibility model to cover all the aspects, because it's not related just the money to make data fair, but also it includes infrastructure, it includes personnel specialized to do curation and preservation and so on. So I think that we should develop a model where all those institutions are sharing their responsibility for the costs of fair data.
Okay, thank you, Solange. So here at the conference, we've been having, it's been really interesting to see some of the emerging discussions, and the very, what we are seeing here is that AI is really coming through and it's starting to be used in real life, in earnest. And that's having consequences for how we look at data and consider the FAIR principles. And in a lot of the sessions, there's been reflections that it's not just the fair data principles, but there is more required. And you're seeing examples like fair squared and other new technological advancements coming up. So what does that, I'm just thinking out loud, what does that mean for the fair data maturity model and what we have built? Is the fair data maturity model still relevant? Does it actually cover a landscape in which AI is playing a much greater role? Is the fair data maturity model suitable to assess whether data is fully AI ready, or do we need something else or something else on top of that? So I'm first going to open that up to the audience, because you've been in a lot of these sessions and you've heard those discussions. Do you feel that having a fair assessment tool of some value is going to be of some value? Does it need to be expanded to be able to allow us to navigate this new landscape with fully AI-ready data?
Hello, Eric Laurie from AIMS. I was just going to say that I thought that I often find that a lot of focus around metadata focuses on the technical aspects of making sure each of the elements are achieved without necessarily worrying too much about the detail. So for example, if you look at a lot of the size of the descriptions of a lot of metadata records, there's very little detail in them, but they've managed to fill in all the vocabs and all that other stuff. So from that perspective, if you look at it as a whole, there's not actually a lot of detail. So I see that in the future, under AI, there's two things. One is getting AI to assist you using that data set, and the other is using the data to train AI. And in both cases, you really want very comprehensive documentation, because either you're embodying this data into something which you don't know what it's doing, or the models simply don't have enough information to really make good judgments to assist you, and it's just going to have to hallucinate the responses. And so I think I'm not sure where it fits into the FAIR principles, but I think that assessing whether the documentation is really complete enough for AI to really help us.
Okay, thank you. Any observations? Any other thoughts? I think Shelley's got a hand up here.
I would add on to that. I mean, I think that was really well said, and I would add on to that especially when you're training the model, that you need to also have the annotation of what is not good data. So we have to really, thinking about your work, Gnana, and if we really want to, in order to have a model that's actually working for us under all conditions, you need to feed it with this is good, this is bad, this is how you recognize it, all the annotations, and do that thoughtfully, and then turn it out into the world, monitoring for the world to change. And once the world changes, then you probably are not getting the results you need. So how do you know that? How do you know you're not getting those results? What is the indicator that all of a sudden that model is no longer fit for purpose? And that goes back to the I'm not sure FAIR covers it. It's like good enough for this, and then not good enough. What is that moment in time? So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, so that's typically. FAIR has a very tight definition. When it came out in 2016, of course, now it has squared itself, but not going there. But the very question that you asked, it's about the model performance. So the FAIR doesn't cover the model performance, and So when we actually build a model, we evaluate in data that the model has not seen. So that's to give that independence. And when you have done this external validation sufficiently, and usually through multiple loops and much discussions and so on, its model is deployed. But when the model is deployed, you actually continue to track the performance of the model. That's where the monitoring comes in. So as you track the model and you start looking for deviation, as long as it is within the tolerable deviation, model continues to operate. If not, you have to take the model down and refresh it. Or there might be a certain point that the model may not even be relevant. So you actually throw it out and then maybe rebuild it or do whatever is necessary at that point of time. All that, of course, should be defined at the very beginning at the stage of problem formulation. Okay, this is how the whole thing would be handled. But this is not part of FAIR, which is fair enough, right? And so that is outside. But the FAIR itself seems to be expanding in scope. I myself have kind of lost track of that, where that FAIR square or the cube would be leading to. But there are other FAIR aspects as well in the model, like bias in the data. If the data is biased, meaning, say, I build a model using a certain subpopulation and then apply to maybe another subpopulation that is unrelated, you're not going to get the right result. Say if this is a case of, let's say, a healthcare model, for example, it can disadvantage that population. So it's about the equity. And so there is another FAIR aspect as well in the model. But so this new FAIR square is trying to capture everything. I'm still not clear whether it's doing it right, but at least in terms of what it is, it's trying to capture everything. So one of the things original FAIR does not address is the data quality itself, the content. But that content is very critical to machine learning model. So that's another aspect that it's wrapping around, and then the responsible AI and so on. Yeah. So that's about the evolution of the FAIR itself.
Yes, thanks, Gnana. Any other questions or any other remarks on that, on where FAIR is going?
Right. Rodel from A-Star Singapore. So data models and software are increasing in sensitivity. Is there a work around handling sensitive information data in the FAIR principles?
Yes, Gnana, if you want to take that, yeah.
Sure. As I said, the traditional FAIR does not deal with sensitive data, but the sensitive data is cardinal to many of the disciplines, especially healthcare, for example. There is a whole lot of way of processing sensitive data. You need sensitive data processing environment, like trusted research environments or equivalence and so on. These are some of the things we are grappling with, and various privacy preserving techniques and so on. So on the technical side and the governance side, there are things. Again, this FAIR square is trying to address some of that, like responsible AI is included in this FAIR square. If you read it the other way around, apparently. That's what I discovered. Having a good logo is one thing, but I don't know whether, whether it really addresses things adequately. I cannot say. Yeah. But on the technical side, yes, there are considerations.
So thank you both, and please do stay up here. And Solange, thank you as well. We've just switched hands, so Keith has handed it back to me for our wrap up and closing. And I've been taking notes while you've been all answering, and I would be very interested, perhaps in the break following, if anybody wants to continue the conversation. But there were some really interesting things that came out of the discussion. Starting with some of Natalie's comments that she made. Imagine us able to ask different questions because we have thought through what FAIR means and added in the right tool sets, recommendations that RDA has at large, and we could ask a question, a place-based question. So Raia, that picture you showed of Raia was just such a mind blow for me. I'm like, oh my gosh, what if I had access to, for this place, you identify whatever that location is, every single physical sample that was there. Then I started to think about, okay, so how do I construct that? Don't hold me to this, but I'm going to throw it out there. Planet and people and prosperity. It's a construct we're using for a different problem, but it popped in my mind, planet, people, prosperity, something along the SDGs. And what if I could understand everything about this place having to do with all of the atmospheric and physical solid earth characteristics, the people that live there, everything about them, their prosperity, so think about their economics and their health and everything, all together in that one spot. And it was like, ooh, can we even do that today? We should be able to do that. We have that ability. And then for the physical samples, if I kind of back into that, tell me all of the analyses that have been run on the physical samples that are there. I don't know your work as well as you do, of course, but all of the chemical analyses and information that you gather from each of those physical samples. What if we knew what all of that was without the work, meaning finding it, identifying, your picture of all of the, what if that was just easier? And what would we learn? What kind of questions would come to our mind if we were able to access all of that as researchers, and what sort of innovation and what sort of impact on the life of people in that area? I just feel like we should just do that. Why is that still hard? We should just do that. There you go. We can start a new RDA group. And then one of the other questions when with Gnana was talking, and Solange, actually the two of you, you were running all of the themes of how you're applying FAIR to all of the workflows, the challenges around convincing researchers to do certain things. So I'm kind of mashing them together. And I really think we need to continue to focus on we live here in RDA in this beautiful bubble. It's all of our, it's like coming home. We are able to talk our own language and we can understand each other, and it's very warm and wonderful, and we love talking to each other. But then you go back to the folks that don't have any idea what we do. What is FAIR? Why are you doing this? Why are you burdening me? But there are those important value statements. What does it mean to actually pay attention to all of the different applications of FAIR within machine learning, within journals, and the hard work that goes into actually explaining all of that? So that leads me into my next topic. Solange reminded me of the work that she and I have done together on what does it mean to communicate with someone and come to them in where they are, what they understand in their language, and be able to work towards using their own value systems, their own culture to explain why these challenges need to be done. So it's the multilingual, it's the education, it's taking the time to actually work that through. These are all ubiquitous for everything that we do. It's not just FAIR, it's anything, but FAIR brings it together in this very holistic way. FAIR Squared, I've got to go look and find out. I haven't dug into FAIR Squared. Now I'm going to have to go upstairs to their booth and check that all out. Let me double check as I wax poetic. One of the I swung through the funders forum. They're here. They had a meeting earlier. They were talking about the value of RDA. And there's very few people who are members of RDA that actually help fund that. So we talked about funding data. The organizational assembly was mentioned during the meeting, and they are the members that actually help fund RDA. They pay a fee. So one of the ways that we can continue to figure out what those costs are, the burden, Solange was talking about the burden of the cost, and Natalie was talking about that, who does that? You can come back to your organizations and say, hey, are you organizational assembly members? Can you please join RDA to continue this conversation, to continue this incredible discussion that we're having here, in bringing that understanding not only within this beautiful bubble that we have to talk to each other internationally, but back to our own organizations, showing the value of this work. Remember the 17,000 views on the research data maturity model? How many files, how many publications do you see that have 17,000 views? That's a testament to the work that we do here at RDA. So on that, I'm going to thank the co-chairs of the Fair Data Maturity Model. Thank you all so much. Keith did the yeoman's work of organizing this session, and I'm so grateful to him for not only helping make International Data Week happen with all of our koalas that we've received in the last RDAs. I forgot to bring mine, Keith. I'm sorry, don't be mad at me. Hopefully I'll get to look at a koala for real this week. And thank you, and to all of the co-chairs for the FDMM and for our speakers. I'm so grateful to all of you. I really was excited about each of your points of view, and I think it will be a testament to come back to our next meeting on widening and deepening, and we will continue to dig in and do well by our researchers and colleagues. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone who came. So thank you. Solange, thank you so much. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.